Mass traumatic events like school shootings or the 9/11 terrorist attacks are long lasting for the people who lived through them. Survivors say talking about their challenges and successes as the years go on is not just part of coping, it's a critical part of their mental health treatment. Zach Cartaya survived the 1999 Columbine High School massacre. In 2012, along with another Columbine survivor, he started the Rebels Project, a nonprofit that connects survivors of mass trauma. To date, they've worked with more than 1,200 survivors across 48 states.
Right after the Aurora Theater shooting, so many of my Columbine brothers and sisters were still hurting. And I found that so many of them were still unable to get the help that they needed and wanted, and were unable to really kind of deal with some of those demons that had come from the shooting. The suicides this week have been incredibly difficult. It's so hard to see those Parkland kids struggling. Losing Jeremy was by far one of the hardest things. Losing him was just a shock because I was always so amazed by his strength. There's a part of me that's like, if someone that strong can lose their battle, you know, what hope does anyone have? And that's a pretty scary, hopeless place.
Yeah.
Which fortunately I'm talking to people about it, not only
Yeah.
not only my friends and family, but you know, professionals as well, because you've got to keep running your marathon.
The National Center for PTSD says nearly 30% of people who witness an American mass shooting develop post-traumatic stress disorder. What's more, Cartaya says surviving a shooting takes a mental toll that can stay with a person for years.
I think for everyone who survived some sort of mass trauma, survivor's guilt is always in the mix. It's incredibly isolating, and you know, you just can't help but to feel alone when you're going through it. I actually talked to the therapist for an hour, and at the end of our hour-long session, I said, oh, by the way, I'm a Columbine survivor, because I thought my anxiety was coming from somewhere else. I ended up in an intensive outpatient program. I was about to take my own life, and I had to really pull myself back together, and it took a lot of work.
Some symptoms of survivor's guilt include flashbacks, hopelessness, irritability, and having difficulty sleeping. Experts say the signs are not always easy to spot. Some research suggests people with childhood trauma are also more susceptible to survivor's guilt. Cartaya says he felt especially challenged after the Sandy Hook shooting.
I just kept wondering why on earth did I survive and live 17 healthy years and continue to survive? There's 20 children that are dead, 26-year-olds that are dead. And so it's easy to grieve, and it's easy to feel, like I said, really isolated and alone in that.
But thanks to the Rebels Project, he's not alone. Cartaya says being in a community of individuals and sharing what he calls a commonality of suffering is one of the first steps survivors can take, and one of the most important.
I'm seeing more and more of us talk more and more every day, and so, you know, knowing that people are starting to own their stories, and that we are helping to successfully reframe that trauma, and reframing my own trauma and building my own narrative has been really validating and really neat for me.
When you talk about reframing your trauma, how does one even begin to tackle that?
You know, I think it starts day one, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
I think on April 21st, I started living in my new normal, whether I was cognizant of it or not. I think the victim mentality is a mentality of, you know, you're kind of, and this is particular for me because we were hunkered down in a room at Columbine. There were 60 of us in the
choir room, right?
In an office adjacent to the choir. Well, it was part of the choir room, but we were in a 6 by 10 foot spot, give or take.
Wow.
And I always picture that as that was the victim. That was the victim of that. But a survivor is someone who's come through it, who, you know, can acknowledge that it's not easy, and you're not perfect, and there's a lot of baggage to carry around, but you're able to work through it, and you're going to continue striving.